The International Monetary Fund officials visited Kenya last month. That is from late September to October 2025. And this is because we reached out to them so that we can discuss a lending program. We can negotiate a lending deal because the one that we had with them expired back in March 2025. And this is because we were unable to meet some of the requirements that they had for us. So they came to Kenya to assess the economic position that we have, and they raised several concerns. One of them was in terms of revenue collection. The other one was our budgets. There was also debt securitization. You know what happened to the fuel levy, where 7 shillings out of the 25 shillings that they collect from the fuel that we buy has been securitized, has been attached to a loan. So it's affecting the future cash flows because it's already out. Now, the other one that they allegedly discussed and they raised concerns on was our stable exchange rate. And the reason why I am using allegedly is because Treasury officials, senior Treasury officials have disputed that they did not raise this concern, that the news reports that have been out there misinterpreted what was in the IMF report. So in this video, which is purely educational, we are going to look at what has been happening to other exchange rates. We're going to look at the South African exchange rate. We're also going to have a glimpse of East African currencies like Tanzania, Uganda, and others, so that we can see where should the Kenyan exchange rate be heading and what are the possible scenarios that could lead to our exchange rate being pegged or just stabilizing around 129 Kenyan shillings. Should it appreciate? Should it depreciate? I'll leave that to you. This is the USD to ZAR. So this is the South African currency. And you can see the graph is going down. Before I explain that, let me clarify to you what appreciation, what depreciation, what adding value means so that you can understand this graph. So this is where we are. Right now, $1 is going for around 129 Kenyan shillings. If $1 was to go to 100 Kenyan shillings, we would say that the Kenyan currency has appreciated. The value of the Kenyan shilling has gone up. So it's a good thing. It might be a good thing or a bad thing. The other case is if $1 was trading at 140 Kenyan shillings, we say that the currency has lost value. It has depreciated. It has been devalued. So this is a good thing or a bad thing, which we will look at. So the smaller the number, the higher the value. The bigger the number, the lower the value. It's an opposite reaction. So when you're looking at this graph, you can see that in the beginning of January, or rather the graph is going down. So it means that this currency is appreciating in value, because in January 2025, $1 was going for around 18.75 ZAR, South African rand. But right now, in November 2025, $1 is going for around 17.75 shillings. You can see that the number has gone down by 2. So that's how the value of the currency has gone up. In short, the graph is going down. The value of the South African rand has increased. This is the US dollar compared to the Ghanaian cedis. Still the same thing. It's not a flat line. But the point is that today, the value has gone up. In that, in January, it was going for around 14.75 shillings. Okay, 14.75 Ghanaian cedis. But right now, it's going for around 11. The number has gone down. The value of the Ghanaian cedis has appreciated. Now, let's go to our neighbor here in Uganda. The same case. In January, it was trading for around 36.75. In November or around October, it's trading at 34.75. You can see that there has been a drop of around 300. So the value of the Ugandan currency has appreciated. And finally, let's have a look at GBP. Not finally, because we're going to look at Kenyan shillings. Still the same case. You can see that the graph is going down. The British pound has appreciated. Now, if this is the case, look at the Kenyan shillings one. Look at how the US dollar is behaving to the Kenyan shillings. It's the only queer currency. If you were to draw a line of this graph, it would be a straight line. It would be a straight line. It's not going down, in as much as when you look at March 2025, you can see that the value appreciated. Our currency was stronger. The Kenyan shillings was stronger in that it was trading at around 128.5. But all along, it's like a straight line. So why would the Kenyan shillings behave differently from these other currencies? If you're to look at other currencies that we haven't discussed here, it's still the same case. And the point is that, or the reason why this is happening to these other currencies, and what we can speculate should be happening to the Kenyan currency, is that the value of the US dollar has been going down. And remember, this is the currency where these other currencies are pegged to. So if the value of the US dollar is going down, then the value of these other currencies should be going up. And this is what we have seen from this graph, except for Kenya. There was this research that was done by Morgan Stanley, which is a trusted and reputable financial institution. And this is what they discovered, that the value of the US dollar against other currencies dropped about 11% in the first half of this year. So this is 2025. The biggest decline in more than 50 years, ending a 15-year bull cycle. These other currencies have been reacting in an opposite manner where their value has been going up. Then why would the Kenyan shillings remain the same? Why would it be stable? So the first explanation that could make this possible is that it could be managed. It's one of the possibilities and not the only possibility. A managed exchange rate affects imports and exports of a country. If an exchange rate is being managed so that it doesn't grow in value, it doesn't appreciate, it could benefit exports or companies that deal with exports and work against imports. So it would affect the price of any item that is being imported, in that the price would not reduce. So this is what I mean. When you look at this calculation, we are looking at exports. Let's assume that you have a company and you export horticultural products, because that is what we do as a country here. We export tea, we export coffee, we export flowers, we export fruits to different countries. In this case, let's assume that you're exporting to the US, because that is what we do. If this company that is exporting avocados, if this company that is exporting flowers is exporting goods worth 100 million Kenyan shillings, they would benefit like this. So let's look at this current exchange rate, the one that we have right now. $1 US is going for 129 shillings. So if your goods are worth 100 million Kenyan shillings, when you divide how much US dollars you are going to receive from this company, remember you're exporting flowers, you're exporting fruits. So that other company that is in the US has dollars, and they're going to pay you in US dollars, which would be exchanged to Kenyan shillings. But if they were to pay you in US dollars, when you divide that, they should pay you an equivalent of 775,194 US dollars. So that is currently. Currently, this is how much that company would pay. But if the value of the Kenyan shilling was to appreciate, in this case, 100 shillings. Now, this is just an example because the number can be 115, the number can be 120. I don't have the exact figure, but I'm using this. So when you divide this, that is the 100 million worth of flowers that you're exporting with the current exchange rate, which is 100, the company on the other end that is buying these flowers would have to pay 1 million US dollars. So when you compare these two numbers here, if this company that is buying avocados, if this company that is buying flowers is going to pay this horticultural company, you can see that they are going to pay less US dollars in the first case scenario, the one that we have. But if the value of the Kenyan shilling was to appreciate, they would pay more, that is 1 million US dollars. So for them, they have to go to the other markets, because the goods here in Kenya have become more expensive, because now they have to pay 1 million US dollars instead of the 194 US dollars. They could let go, allow me to say that, of the Kenyan exports. They would go to a neighboring country like Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia to buy the flowers there, where they would pay less US dollars. So you can see, if the value of the Kenyan shilling was to appreciate, if it was to appreciate, it could scare away importers on the other end, because it would make Kenyan exports more expensive since they have to pay. So that is the benefit of maintaining an exchange rate, or that's the benefit of even devaluing an exchange rate. And this is what allegedly, like I said, China has been doing, in that they're trying to make their products less expensive. Let's say that you've gone to a Japanese website and you want to import a car. Specifically, you want to import a 2017 Mazda CX-5, and it's going for $11,938 Now, I haven't included these other expenses. I've just included the cost that is on this website. So it would cost you around $11,938. So you ask yourself, since I have Kenyan shillings, what can I do to have an equivalent amount of money to pay for this car? I would like to have an idea of how many Kenyan shillings should I have in my bank account so that I can be able to buy and afford this car. So currently, this is where we are at, the current baseline, where $1 equals to 129 Kenyan shillings. You can see when you do the multiplication, that is the US dollars 11,938 times 129, you should have 1.5 M in your bank account to be able to afford this car. But if the shilling was to appreciate, that is, if $1 was to be 100 Kenyan shillings, you just do the multiplication. You'll see that you just need 1.1 million Kenyan shillings in your bank account. So it's cheaper if the value of the currency appreciates, because now you just need less Kenyan shillings to buy this car. But you can see if the currency was to be devalued to 140, if it was to lose value, you would have to have 1.67 million shillings to be able to afford this car. So you can see if the value appreciates, the Kenyan shilling becomes more strong, you'll save money. That is 347,102 is the amount of money that you'd save. If the value of the Kenyan shilling was to go down, you'd have to pay more, and you'd have to pay 130,418 shillings more. The value of a currency appreciates, it becomes more cheaper to import items from China, to buy machinery, so it benefits industries or businesses that import, but makes products expensive for countries that are exporting textiles, exporting tea, exporting coffee. So if a country was to manage an exchange rate so that it doesn't appreciate, it would definitely benefit exporters. And the reason why you might view it as a positive or a negative, it's a positive for the government, because it's out of these exports that we get US dollars in our country to import oil. So they are related. We need US dollars. We need to export more items abroad as a country so that we can have US dollars to import the oil, to buy the wheat that we buy from these other countries, to buy the laptops. Because if I was interested in buying laptops, in buying a car, then I go to the bank, I need to exchange these dollars to have these dollars, and they say, we don't have enough US dollars to buy this. Go to another forex bureau to exchange that. You can see how it would affect imports. Now, this is a scenario where any government was to control an exchange rate from appreciating or from adding value. Now, the other explanation, which is not linked to the government controlling it, is the one that I've just explained, imports and exports. Yes, we've seen that the value of the Kenyan shilling should have appreciated. By now, it could be going for 100 shillings, 115 shillings, 120 shillings. I don't have the specific number because I'm just speculating based on what I have shown you. But if that is the case, then even if the government doesn't intervene or manage the currency like what they are alleging, that it's just the economic conditions that are setting this price that is based on supply and demand, they're not interfering with it, is that the imports themselves would offset an appreciation. In that, okay, let's say $1 was to go for 100 Kenyan shillings, but you find that Kenyans are now importing more. So the demand for the dollar is now more, since we need US dollars to buy cars, to buy laptops, to buy machinery. So that in itself is a correction that doesn't need any government interference. It's just the market. Now that explains such a situation. The other situation is in terms of repaying foreign loans. And this one happens at the national level, where if a government, if a country has debts that are in US dollars, that are in a foreign currency, for example, in Kenya, we have Eurobonds and we have to pay back the Eurobonds in dollars. We owe IMF, we owe the World Bank, we owe other countries. Since we have to pay them in US dollars, remember the dollars are leaving the market, the Kenyan market. So the value of the Kenyan shilling, in as much as it's supposed to appreciate, just that payment would affect the US dollars that are in circulation, because now they have to take away the US dollars to pay off these debts, which can lead to a reduction, if not a shortage of the US dollars. And we know what happens when the demand is more but the supply is less. The price goes up. Having shown you all this, what do you think is happening? Is it managed? Is it just the market behaving, the market reacting and just correcting the currency? Do you see the benefits to this? Do you see any disadvantage to this? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments.